Hello, everyone, and we are live from London. This is Christina Mandlakiani, co-founder of Mind Valley, and the host of Mind Valley Book Club. And today I'm speaking for the first time from our official location in London. It's a new setup. I hope it worked. My today's guest is really remarkable, amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book today. In fact, I wish I had more time to go deeper and do it slower and not just rush through the book. So my guest today is Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman. Welcome. I didn't confirm. Is it okay if I call you Scott, or do we have to be official and when we talk to one another? Hi, Scott.
You can hey, you can call me Dr. Scott.
Dr. Scott, great.
Yeah.
Because, my guest today has amazing credentials. Well, in addition to being professor at Columbia University and being the head of the Department of Human Potential, I think I probably didn't pronounce it he's also one of the scientists, one of the top 1% scientists who is referenced by other researchers, by other academics, which is, in my opinion, remarkable. If you know how the universities are ranked, they're ranked by how many times their works are being cited by other researchers. So by those rankings, my guest today is the top of the top. So in addition to that, he is also the author of 10 books. I understand, right? And
11, but who's counting?
11 by now. Oh
This is
my.
the 11th one. This is the 11th one.
So we are discussing his 11th book, Rise Above. And in addition, he is the host of the Psychology podcast. And I just found out another part of my guest's life, which I had no idea because it wasn't in the official in the official bio, but he's also a mentalist. So with all that intro, Dr. Scott, welcome to Mind Valley.
Oh, wow. What an honor it is to be here.
Thank you so much. And since I was reciting your bio from memory, if I have left out something which is incredibly important, please say it now so that we know.
I was rejected from American Idol twice.
Oh, wow.
So there you go.
Singing?
Yeah, singing. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
that you have so many facets to what you're doing. And I do not know. Maybe we'll talk about this story. Maybe not, considering the topic of the book. But from the book, I read that it wasn't an easy start for you as a child.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I didn't have the greatest educational experiences growing up. I had an auditory disability that made it hard for me to process auditory input in real time, and so that was an indication to everyone that they thought I was stupid, and
Mm.
I just felt I had a completely different inner life. I had a very imaginative, creative inner life. Still do. Funny enough. Funny enough, that didn't go away. And yeah, but no one could see that. They just saw the outward appearance.
Well, and you have dedicated a lot of your research to creativity and to potential and to this
Yes.
aspects of human life. Uh, I actually I forgot to mention that Dr. Scott is he is cognitive psychologist, which is, in my
Mm.
opinion, absolutely amazing, and I love this field. So,
Hmm.
as I said, I really truly enjoyed reading the book, but it came with a warning. Those of you who follow Mind Valley Book Club, you would have seen the warning that I wrote both in the post and in email. I think it will probably trigger quite a lot of people. Am I right, Dr. Scott?
No, I hope not. I hope only in good ways. It may cause you to reflect on
Mm.
your life and maybe even inspire you to. The only warning I would give is that it may inspire you to become a better person.
That for sure, definitely. And one thing I can say that you are in good hands because Scott has this amazing capacity to be understanding and very patient with the reader, obviously.
Mm.
So you will feel taken care of, but a lot of the book is actually. Uh, taking up quite a lot of buzzwords, at least in our industry, in the industry of personal growth, and
Mm.
turning everything around, so that you maybe reevaluate quite a lot of things that we take for granted, and we are so used to hearing the same things. And maybe we'll start with a obvious one, with the trauma. Could you maybe
Mm.
tell us what pushed you to write a book? Because it's not your first book, but it did feel, as I was reading the book, that maybe your cup was filled with all the talking about trauma in our contemporary society.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I wrote a lot of books on transcendence and human potential and the upper reaches of human nature. And I wanted to write a book that just met people more where they are right now,
Hmm.
because I feel like it, it in 2025 it didn't feel like everyone was transcending. Like, that's not where I need to meet everyone. It
Mm.
feels like people are really suffering right now. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a, I call it honest love. I like to validate people's real
Hmm.
felt pains and then empower them.
Hmm.
So it's the love part is validation. I recognize that everyone's not doing great right now. Let's be honest. People aren't doing great right now. And I think that there's so much more humans could become. So I wanted to write a book that really did the empowerment part, because I felt there was so much of just the validation part going on. Everyone,
Mm.
validating, online. Okay, you have a trauma. It's okay, to stay in bed all day and do nothing.
Mm.
It's okay to be an asshole to others because you've had trauma. You get a free pass. And I guess I wanted to say that we could do better than that. We can
Mhm.
not only overcome our past, but we can grow, and in beautiful, beautiful ways that you might not be told on Instagram.
And I have to confirm that the book does give a lot of practical advice, a lot of techniques, and it's so. I'll first maybe share with you guys, if you haven't read the book, what to expect, and then we'll go deep into the topics. And the topics, the overall topic of the book is that it is beneficial for you to uh, let go of this of your victimhood, and we all have some
Yes.
elements of that, and actually move on to a greater potential. So the book is very heavily based on research and science. The part with references is humongous, which is I really love that. I enjoyed it and I appreciate that very much. It is very easily given and written, so it doesn't read like an academic reading. It actually reads like you start reading, you get stuck. I had to pull myself out. So it is a very engaging reading. But in addition to that, there are also a lot of techniques and practices, something that you can do right away to start moving on and to deal with these issues. In addition to that, it actually takes up almost every trigger word, not trigger word, okay, I'm using trigger word, but buzzword is probably a more correct thing, that are popular, at least in our industry, and turns it out around. As I said, in fact, there was this one quote, which is not directly about the book, but you mentioned that a lot of podcast approaches to you are about trauma, and, authors who wrote
Oh,
books about trauma.
most,
And I
yeah.
actually, because I screen books online, which are freshly published every single week. And exactly, I was literally half the time I was reading the book, I was ready to stand up and applaud you standing, because I
Well,
felt somebody hears me.
yay!
Yeah.
Well, it seems like people are competing, authors are competing to see how small the trauma they can do. So I get one on micro traumas, and then I get another book pitch on micro, nano traumas, atomic traumas. And I just made that one up, but maybe that's a good, a fun phrase. It just seems like if whatever it is, if you put the word trauma in there, then it's going to sell well.
Mm.
And there self uh how do I put this? Freud discovered many, many years ago there is great value in talking
Yeah.
therapy. That was Freud's great insight. That didn't exist before Freud, really. That talking therapy could be a thing that could be valuable, and so it is very valuable. And it's a very long process. It's helpful. Psychodynamic is very helpful over a very long period of time, and being able to understand your insights. But if all you're talking about is that one thing that happened to you then when you were 3, you can really miss out on the beauty that's right in front of your eyes. I'm a real big fan of mindfulness and integrating that into your daily life in a way that um, almost nothing else is as important as the moment that you're in right now, because that's all we
Mm.
have, you know. So I just find like if I had priorities, I'd rather be 100% with you right now than thinking about the one thing that happened to me when I was 3.
That's so true. And the second part of the book gives actually a lot of instruments to move on. So I guess what I wanted to ask about the book first is you do make a distinction between the fact that we talk a lot about trauma and maybe put everything on it, and when something means everything, it doesn't mean anything anymore. But on the other hand, you also acknowledge that there is a real thing. So you mentioned a little earlier that we live in a world where a lot of people feel traumatized or feel like they're victims. Yet, statistically, we live in a world which is much safer and much better and much nicer than
Mhm.
for generations. So, what's happening? Why is this so much? The talk of the town now, is it good, is it bad, are there any dangers? Because on one side it is good that we acknowledge
Oh.
that people have experiences, but I understand that not everything is good about it.
Yes, and I'd like to encourage the listeners to comment as we go along. I'd love to see what people are thinking and how this is landing with them. I think about your question a lot, and I talk about it a lot on different podcasts. It's something that is perennially a topic of discussion. I think there's just something in human nature where you can feel almost guilty saying that you're doing good when other people aren't doing good. I think
Mm.
there's something called survivor's guilt, you know?
Ah,
So if
yeah.
you're like on a path of growth and you're really, crushing it and all your friends are severely depressed, it's not going to feel great to like go to all your friends and be like, "I'm crushing it." Like that's not a good way to make friends, right? So I think there's something going on in society where there's sort of like a pressure we all feel to just talk about how horrible we're doing and all the
Mm.
traumas we have and all the things that are going wrong as a way we feel like that's our way of connecting, you know,
Mhm.
and that's our way of getting social media likes,
Mhm.
vulnerability is such a hot thing, but as I say, that's great that Brene Brown, did her whole vulnerability thing, but now we have vulnerability on steroids,
Yeah.
where um, the only way to connect to another person now is through your vulnerability. And I
Yeah.
just want to get back to this vibe where we connect with each other over like our shared growth goals. Like, what
Yeah.
happened to that? What happened to
Yeah.
that? I mean, you see that in certain communities. I mean, in the fitness community, you don't really see much of a victim mindset. When I go to the gym, I have a coach. When I start to say, "Oh, I don't want to do another one," they're like, "I believe you can do another one." Like, shut up. Now, I'm not saying we need to tell people with trauma to shut up. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying there's a certain like, there's certain cultures where we just inherently believe in people's higher potential, but
Mm.
I think they're far and few between now. Those cultures. When you apply to colleges now, you get into the college to the extent to which you have the biggest sob story,
Mm.
not a story about overcoming. Like in my day, you would get into the college and you were well respected if you had a sob story and you overcame it or you like worked
Mm.
towards overcoming it. Now the
Mhm.
working towards overcoming it part is not rewarded. Now it's like, oh, I've had 50 traumas. It's like, hey, you're into Harvard. That's it. I don't care about your SAT scores. You had 50 traumas, you're in. Like
God.
you'll that'll be good for our optics. And I don't know. I
Mm.
just think like we had. I wanted more of a culture where we just raise everyone up,
Mhm.
and teach people the tools to overcome without
Mhm.
focusing so much and so intensely on just rewarding the suffering.
Mm. As an author, and I have been a guest in some podcasts. I have been in a situations where I was expected to share a, a painful experience, and that was pretty much a condition. Like you have to share, no matter what. How much do we encourage that in each other? I think it's sometimes is like a barrier. Like if you're not willing to do that, that means that you hide something from us, and that means that you're not
Yeah.
authentic. You do talk about authenticity as well in your book. In fact, you touch upon every single word that our industry claims ours.
It's true. I'm perhaps a little too authentic. Maybe I need to tone down my authenticity. But I can't stand like BS. I really want people to show up how they are. And I encourage that with my friends. I encourage that with my lovers, whatever, whoever. I want people to show up. Like if you're having a bad day, that's fine. Show up. Being like, oh, today's not a good day, and tomorrow's probably going to be better. You know there's a certain mentality that we need to get into, which maybe it all just goes back to the Buddha. Maybe the Buddha had it right. Just everything has changed, right? And the state we're in now is not necessarily going to be a state we're in tomorrow. But not only that, we don't need to identify so much with our pain. We don't need to identify. We can recognize we have pain, but we don't need to be one with it, where we are that pain completely and forevermore are that pain. I think that humans are so much more than just the worst that is happening to them or has happened to them.
I've noticed in your book you had this amazing chapter about dealing, giving up your emotional pain, and there are a lot of interesting techniques which are actually a little bit. Well, unexpected for me, at least I didn't see this many. Could you walk us through a little bit? What can we do if we feel that intense, unpleasant emotion in the moment?
Oh, I love this topic. I teach a course at Columbia called The Science of Living Well, a course I
Oh,
created. You're welcome to sit in on my class
uh-huh.
anytime you want, Christina. But
Thank
we have
you.
a big part of it is a big part of the class is how to deal with uncomfortable emotions. So I love this topic, and there's a whole bunch of ways that are not just coping, but actually thriving with uncomfortable emotions. They don't have to limit us as much as we think that they do. We're also one practice I like is the handshake practice, where we welcome in our beautiful monsters and acknowledge them, and greet them and ask what is it you want? Why are you bringing so much attention to my life right now? And
Hmm.
listen to them. And um, a lot of times, our dark side just wants to be heard. Just
Hmm.
wants to be acknowledged, and acknowledging, okay, I'm feeling anxiety right now. I acknowledge that I am angry right now. What are some thoughts, some ways that I can process this situation, um, so the anger won't be so intense. I had a moment in my class yesterday where I had a
Hmm.
special guest, Sharon Salzberg, who is a dear friend of mine. You should talk to Sharon sometime. She's amazing, and she I zoomed her into my class, and and this was an amazing moment. Like the great Sharon Salzberg, and I had some students on their laptops, not paying attention, and just like they didn't seem to care. And I was like, we have the great Sharon Salzberg here. Like, it's so disrespectful. I found myself getting angry, and I could feel this. But I think being mindful, without prejudging the emotion.
Hmm.
So I just noticed that I was getting angry at these students. And then I started to think, well, um, I wonder what's going on in their lives right now. Maybe the most priority important thing in their life is not what the most important thing in my life is right now at this moment. And then I started to think, well, maybe some of them look really stressed, and well, I hope they're okay. I went from, like, being, how dare they disrespect Sharon, to,
Hmm.
like, I ended up kind of being like compassion, like, oh man, I hope they're doing okay. Like, whatever is really, for something to be that much more important to you than the great Sharon Salzberg. Clearly, something's not going right over there. So, just loving kindness meditation is really valuable as well, and being able to just notice. So that's all I'm saying here, is being able to notice without judgment and without identifying it as with who you are. There was no point in that cycle where I thought, I am angry, like,
Hmm.
I am angry. And that thought never entered my head. What I noticed, that I was feeling this emotion that often I identify as anger, but I was like, let me see, I don't, is this really what I want to be feeling right now? And are there other ways of approaching the situation that would be more productive? And and so there's a whole process in which you can really create that space between the automatic reaction and emotion, um, and and your thoughts.
So talking about that, and you've taught psychology obviously for a really long time, and you've researched it for a long time, and it's your favorite topic, and still you caught yourself feeling angry. Uh, there is also another phenomenon, not researched, it's just my observation, where people never acknowledge when they feel something which is not socially acceptable. Do you have any advice to people who actually refuse to, or maybe they don't have to acknowledge that they feel angry sometimes, but there are people who would say, I never feel angry, I never feel sad, I never feel this. I mean,
That's not good too. Yeah, either extreme is not good because it suggests they're really, I mean, we could get really psychoanalytical here. It does
mhm,
suggest there's a repression there. I don't trust the person who always seems happy, just as much as I don't trust the person who always seems sad. Well,
mhm.
I'm actually more likely to trust the person who always seems sad. That's the truth. That's the truth than the person. Do you know what I'm saying? That person.
Yeah.
Well, because I think you want to create a life where you are fully human and you're not
Mhm,
ashamed of being fully human.
mhm,
A lot of people who may just seem uh, perpetually joyful. Some of that is temperament, so that's true.
mhm,
But a lot of them maybe have been given messages that they're never allowed to show sadness or anger, or that it's bad. It's bad. You're a bad person if you or
mhm,
feel the dark side of emotions. And like, I'm all about the dark side of emotions. I teach a course, a whole section exploring your dark side, and it's so much fun when you really get curious and loving and mindful about all of your human experiences. There's something
mhm,
beautiful that happens, where you start to integrate it all, and all starts to be productive, and you can put it into your work, put it into, like the civil rights movement. I mean, wouldn't have advanced if Martin Luther King wasn't angry.
yeah.
So there's just so much that can really be harnessed for creativity and productivity, when we bring our whole self to the table, non-judgmentally and in a loving way.
So, a little bit connected to this question is I've observed that sometimes when we don't want to acknowledge something about ourselves, we are also not aware that we are not doing that. And you do talk about honesty with yourself in your book quite intensively. So how do we cross from just living in our bubble where we're satisfied with our position as a victim or our position as this holier than holy person who never gets angry? How do we cross over into seeing that actually I am just sitting in the cage which I created for myself?
Oh, I need to process that one. I feel like I'm in third grade again. I was like,
Sorry.
uh, can you ask the question one more
maybe
time?
maybe we shouldn't push people out of their cages. What I'm trying to say is that
I
uh,
don't want to push anyone anywhere. I don't want to I want to meet people where they are.
that's true.
100%.
That's true. So in that case, the question changes. If somebody is happily a
Not really.
victim,
Yeah. Well, I
if
would say
somebody is
this.
happily a victim in their puzzle, do we need to wake them up and tell them like you don't have to suffer?
This is what I would say, because I
Mhm.
mean, I'm a self-actualization. I create a form of coaching
Yeah.
called self-actualization coaching, and I would just use a little bit of a different language, but I think it's the same thing as what you're getting at.
Mhm.
Look, we want people to realize, we want people to have the insight themselves that the cage is open and that they
Mhm.
can actually walk out of it, that they
Mhm.
don't need to learn helplessness.
Mhm.
And but what's interesting is that you have to learn hope in order to have this hope. You have to learn it. You have to actively do it, because learned helplessness is the default state in humans. It's not what's learned, actually. Helplessness is the default state. That's what they found 50 years later, after the original learned helplessness studies. They found that in rats and the dogs,
Mhm.
they learn helplessness, but in humans, that's where we want to go naturally as our default state. There's
Wow.
something so primal in our deep in our Raphael nucleus to get
Mm-hmm.
technical, where we get pings, of like dopamine when we're like, it's kind of perverse in a way when you think about how our brain is wired there, where we actually feel more comfortable being in a helpless state, even though we don't want to be in that state.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating thing what happens, but I just want people to know that there are tools and techniques that we can all learn. We learn hopeful. We learn to be hopeful by having a broader changing. My friend Elizabeth calls it the perception box. We expand
Mm-hmm.
our perception box. We kind of see the world in a different way, and a good coach, a good teacher. A good Christina, ahead of Mind Valley, who's helping people. What you do is you ask questions, and you get their thinking in a way that gives them an insight themselves, that, oh wow, that it's open, the cage is
Mm-hmm.
open. Oh my gosh, today I'm gonna maybe not run out of it, but today I'm just gonna venture out, push people a little bit to get outside their comfort zone. That's what I do with my students, but little by little. I'm not saying rip the band-aid off. I'm not saying push them out of the cage. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Love is good, but
Mm-hmm.
gently let them see for themselves that if they go 3 feet out of the cage and look around, did any tiger eat you? No. No? Okay, maybe go 5 now. Go 5 inches out of the cage, 6 inches, day by day. Before you know it, people will have a completely different life.
Mm-hmm. Another question I wanted to ask, because you just mentioned, and you write about it in the book, that we lean towards helplessness, but we have to learn
Mhm.
hopefulness.
Hopefulness.
Um, and a very similar thing you mentioned when you were talking about fear in the book, that we learn and unlearn fears in different parts of our brain. So why does it happen? Why does it happen? Why is it that all those things that are natural to us, and I know probably it's not about the book, it's just, I'm just asking you because you have such a long experience in this field. Why is it that all the things which are so natural to us can actually take us to really bad places, whereas everything that is good for our mental health we have to learn?
Mm. Oh boy, you're asking like a question. Why do we have an evolutionary design as we do? Well, what's one thing that's interesting about evolutionary logic is that we didn't evolve to be happy. That we
Mm,
should know that first and foremost. That was never part of the evolutionary design. There is to be happy. Our genes actually don't care about our happiness. They just care
mm,
about our survival and reproduction. And so we are constantly in the state of um, making sure that we're safe and secure, um, and and often, when we're single, or are there potential mates, around. And then unfortunately sometimes also when we're not single and in a monogamous relationship, we were constantly looking around, oh, maybe there's someone better. But
yeah.
but this is part of being human, and we evolved to be that way. And those things don't make us happy. The things that make us happy are when we're not so focused on our survival anymore, when we're finding meaning in our experiences, and we're cognitively transcending the moments and being in awe and wonder at the world, or being deeply connected to someone in a way where there's no, we're not trying to get anything out of them. There's no evolutionary imperative in wanting to be friends with Christina, and it's just
Mhm.
like, I just for the sake of just being friends. There's no survival or reproduction purpose. No offense.
Mhm.
No, anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's sorry, that was an awkward joke. But I'm silly. I'm a silly guy. But yeah. So it's just one of those things. It's like, just being able to witness someone else who may be very different from you, and being able to, I think we need more of that in this world right now. It's just being able to
Mhm.
like um not needing something out of someone, but
Mhm.
really being able to witness and admire the beauty of another person's being and their own self actualization journey that may be very different from yourself. But
Mhm.
the bad is stronger than the good, Christina. I think that's another big answer to your question. We evolved for the bad to be more attention grabbing You know,
Mm,
when we have a toothache, our tongue keeps going over that one area over and over and over. We don't pay attention to all the rest of the teeth that are fine.
mhm. That's a very well, thought provoking. I would say. I wouldn't want to say it's bad, but or bad news. uh, so for those of you who haven't read the book, I very warmly recommend it. I am a little bit
Thank
annoyed that
you.
I had to rush through the book. I am planning to actually find time and read it more, like savoring it, because
Oh wow.
there's so much I really love how you explain things, and I'm reading books for money, obviously. Yeah, thank you for showing the book. So I read a lot of books, and it's not very often that I truly enjoy reading, and it's everything is so new, so fresh, such a new angle. Maybe I should have read your previous 10 books, and I would have known what I was going for.
A couple of them were
So
clunkers
I would
in my
actually
early days.
probably because I just finished it, so I have so many thoughts from here and there. So if it's not a coherent story, bear with me. But there were some questions that I kind of stuck in my head. So one of the topics that you're covering in the book is about self-esteem, which having a teenage, well, two teenage children, is a big thing for me. I care about that, but
Hmm.
the interesting dichotomy in that chapter is between self-esteem and, well, narcissism in essence. Well, maybe I'm slightly distorting the idea, but
No, it's right.
um, how do you balance between, or is there a balance? What's the difference between a very healthy self-esteem, which is good for your life, obviously, versus becoming a nuisance to society in the shape of narcissism?
No, it's a really good question. Uh, s- I've been studying narcissism, but I realize there are different types of narcissism, and in my research, I've been really zooming in on a particular type that most people aren't as familiar with, called vulnerable narcissism. And with that, you are so obsessed with validation and with being. It's not that you feel like you're great, or that you're like superior to others, which is what's called grandiose narcissism. That's what most people think of when they think narcissism is the arrogant, person.
Hmm.
But with vulnerable narcissists, not so much they're arrogant, is that they feel entitled to special privileges because they feel like they're suffering more than everyone else, or they feel like they are, they just need constant attention for their suffering, or they need constant attention um, for their fragility. Like I need my fragility recognized at all times and in all situations. And that's a very uncertain self-esteem. That's not a healthy self-esteem.
Hmm.
That I think we can really help people. I have a lot of compassion for people who score high on those scales. That's why I wrote this book. Is want people to have a very stable, healthy self-esteem where you just feel like you're worthy. The
Hmm.
problem with people who score high on vulnerable narcissism scales is that they never they feel like they're kind of broken deep down inside, and that's sad. That's really sad. I don't want that for anyone. No one is broken deep down inside. um Maybe one person is that I can think of, but no, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I can
No.
think of two, a few.
Yeah, maybe. No, I'm joking. But none of the Mind Valley listeners
No, no, no. They're
are
usually the
broken.
heads of state.
Yes. What did you say? They're what?
They're usually the heads of state.
The heads of state. Incredible, incredible. A healthy self-esteem is one where you just feel like, you're where you belong here, like in any moment, like, yeah, I belong here. There's nothing wrong with me. And I'm just as worthy as anyone else. But that's a very different thing than going around saying I'm better than everyone, and also very different than
Mm,
going around with such an uncertain self-esteem at all times, where you're like, wow, I need the validation because I don't know internally what I am.
mhm. So, if somebody is grandiose narcissist, and
Mm.
I am also much more fascinated by vulnerable, but just to be clear, do they have healthy self-esteem or high self-esteem, or do they also suffer from not truly believing that they're worthy of what they project to the world?
So there was a lot of debate in the psychology
Hmm.
literature about whether or not grandiose narcissists are deep down insecure, and
Hmm.
the latest research suggests, much to the chagrin of everyone, they are not actually deep down insecure. We they grandiose narcissists actually are just confident as f.
Yeah.
And I often joke. I say, if you got to be some type of narcissist, be a grandiose narcissist. Don't be a vulnerable narcissist. We have found in our research that, and I can send it, people the paper. You can go on my website, find the paper. We find that across the board, grandiose narcissism is correlated with higher well-being in life.
Mm.
I'm not saying higher well-being around the people around you. Maybe you're making their lives miserable, but it is correlated with higher well-being for yourself. It's correlated with greater productivity, leadership. I mean, how many leaders, have score high in grandiose narcissism, have a sort of mindset, I'm great, I'm destined for
Mhm.
greatness, is one of the it's literally one of the items on the grandiose
Mhm.
narcissism scale. So someone might ask me then, be like, well, then what's wrong about grandiose, or what's
Yeah.
bad about it? I'll tell you, we're starting to rethink this stuff. We just published a recent paper looking at four different profiles: those who are high and grandiose, high and vulnerable, those in low in both, those high in one or not the other. We found that those who are high in grandiose narcissism and low in vulnerable narcissism, um, weren't that many downsides. And I know no one
Mhm.
wants to hear that. No, everyone likes
Mhm.
to make fun of the narcissist, but I think there's nuance. And um, if there's one downside, you had to ask me,
Mhm.
overconfidence it's important to check your overconfidence from time to
Mhm.
time. You need people
Mhm.
around you who can tell you when you're getting
Yeah.
a little too cocky. That's super important. Also, we found that grandiose narcissism was correlated with imposter syndrome, and interestingly enough, where
Interesting.
if you're constantly defending this superior image of yourself, you can
Yeah.
start to lose your full humanity and sense of, who you are beyond just your greatness, right? So,
Mhm.
I'm not giving making a case to become a grandiose narcissist, but there's some interesting recent research suggesting we need to rethink the concept of grandiose narcissism, because it seems to be linked to like success in life.
Yeah. Well, this is one beautiful quality about your book is that you don't talk in absolutes. You give
No,
you give sides, and actually, maybe it is a little frustrating for people who are used to very simple recipes, but you
that's
pretty
right.
much leave it in the hands of the people to decide, how to balance the two things. Now, one question I also wanted to ask, and I'm sorry, I don't see a lot of my computer because my camera is there. I only occasionally look at Dr. Scott on this computer. So if there is any question, Marsha, do bring it up. We don't have a lot of time left. But this question I wanted to ask, and then this question will come. You actually detached the idea of narcissism from medical diagnosis, although in psychology there is a medical
Yeah.
diagnosis which is probably not applied to 80% of the population like we do now colloquially. So why did you decide to do that, and how is it helpful to us, the regular people, to recognize that maybe I'm also a narcissist?
Well, that's the hardest thing. My book publisher was like, "There's no way you can write a self-help book and tell people part of the problem might be them." You
Yeah.
can't. Most self-help books that sell bestsellers are two things. One, they tell you that your ex-husband is a narcissist, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong, and there's nothing wrong with you. It was all your ex-husband. And then the second thing is, you are badass. Okay.
Yeah.
So those are the two messages for best-selling books. And I wanted to write a book, where I was just like, well, Kelly, you are badass. I want to be honest. Kelly is badass in the comment section. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
but I wanted to write a book and say, well, let's look and identify some of these patterns within ourselves that may be holding us back from our own
Mhm.
happiness and well-being. And let's radical self honesty, I think, is a beautiful thing.
Mm.
I do it myself. I love my friends. I like friends who can be radically self honest, and being able to identify, well, maybe there's sometimes I do get in a victim mindset and it's holding me back. If my
Mm.
reader can make that insight and be that vulnerable and honest with themselves to recognize that, I think they can achieve so much more of what they want in their life than if they constantly blame it on others. I'm not saying it's never
Mm.
the ex-boyfriend's fault. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, is it 100% always the boyfriend's fault? 100%. Is there
Yeah.
any way we're contributing to a dynamic, in this world,
Mm.
that may be a pattern that is not healthy for us, that we continue doing over and over again? Are there ways that in which it's very easy to blame the whole world for our problems,
Mm,
That's easy, you know. It's a lot harder to do the inner work. But I just think that, like, I believe in everyone's potential to do the inner work. You know, I'm not coming at this from a place of pessimism. I come from a place of
mm,
optimism, that I think that if we're all just, put down the shields and the guards that we all raise with each other, and we're honest with each other about, the ways in which, maybe we need to take responsibility for various things, we really can change.
mm. And I have to agree that in your book it comes across that you do have faith in people, at least in people who read your book, which is a rare sight. Honestly, I think there's a quote which I wrote out, but I don't remember it by heart. But about the whole idea that we sometimes oversimplifying and dumbifying things too much to the point to our own detriment, where you're capable of so much more. Now, for those of you who are watching, the question I know is up, and we'll get to that question in a moment. For those of you who are watching, we just had a little bit of a chat about narcissism. In his book, Dr. Scott picks up a lot of very favorite topics of mine and goes in the same, and we just touched a little bit upon it. So if you're interested to go deeper and to actually see it for what it is, there is a talk about traumas, and we talked also a little bit about emotions, talk about our victimhood, the difference between being victimized and actually staying in the victimhood mentality. There is also a very interesting chapter on highly sensitive people, which I was like, oh
Yes.
my god. There are a lot of
Here we
very,
go.
very, yeah, very interesting topics that you will want to. Actually, a nice one about gratitude, about how you, contribute to the world, make the world a better place. As I said, the second part of the book. I mean, the whole book is empowering, but the second part of the book gives kind of a roadmap what to do next. So, warmly recommended. There's a question, and then I'll ask the last question, which is typical for me, and we're going to overshoot today. I'm sorry about that. So, the question: how can you deal with people who are unable to resonate with, like people in power? Interesting.
It's a great question, and I wish there was an easy answer, because all sorts of people bring out all sorts of feelings in us that we can't control, that we're going to feel a certain way. But I think a lot of it goes back to what I said earlier about loving kindness meditation. I think I had a profound insight that came to me when Sharon Salzberg told me once that, I said, "Why do we meditate on our enemies, loving kindness? Why am I wishing? I don't really want to wish loving kindness to my enemies." But she said, think of it this way: um, these people are suffering too, just like we all suffer. They're clearly not well, right? Or else, there's a lot of people aren't well right now. If we wish for everyone to be happy, to not have mental illness, that's a net positive on the world. You're not
Mm,
just wishing that person well, but you're wishing the whole world well. And getting more into that mentality allows you actually to relate to people better, even people
mm,
that you don't like, or that rub us the wrong way. Wishing them well is wishing the world well, but it's not saying that you're
mm,
excusing things. You're not.
mhm,
You're still allowed to disapprove of what people are doing, but what you're doubly suffering, by, the person's doing that, what regardless of what you think, they're still going to keep doing what they're doing.
mhm,
So why suffer yourself with the anger and the all the emotions that are only going to change your epigenetics in a way that,
mm,
is going to cause, your health to suffer. Your mental health will suffer. You don't have to choose mental illness, um, just because the world is, other people are mentally ill. Let me say that again. You don't have to choose mental illness just because someone else is mentally ill.
mm. Thank you for that. I wish we had more time, and maybe
Oh,
maybe we'll
me
have to find
too.
place for more time, because there were so many interesting topics. I would love to go deeper, dive deeper, and actually look at them, what it is really, not just what we're used to thinking and talking about them, but what it is really. And as you were answering this question, I remembered a very interesting part about your bio. You actually have education both in psychology and philosophy, and I think that shows a lot, because there's so much philosophical, like deep wisdom, which goes beyond just like the practical things. Oh, you have to do so and so. So thank you for this book. book, I do want to ask the traditional question of those of you who are live to send a heart for my guests in
Oh,
messages, or you can write them, as a comment in the video below, because most of you are going to watch it in recording. So I'm aware of you guys too. And my last traditional
look at
question
all
is
the
to
hearts! Look at all those hearts! Oh
yeah.
my god! They literally made my day. People just made my day. I've never gotten so many hearts at once. Wow.
I'm glad about that.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
the question to you, Dr. Scott, and I know you've
Yeah.
written several books, but this book particularly, how would you like it to change the world?
Oh, I really want this to change the world because I think if everyone feels more empowered to realize their higher potential and not feel as though they have to be stuck in their own mental prison. A lot of times we get stuck in our own mental prison, not the prison that is objectively around us. I think it's just better for the world. It's better for us. I think that there's a better way. I think humans can be better than we are right now.
I 100% agree. And thank you so much. Thank you for, on this positive note, I want to encourage you guys who haven't read the book to get yourself a book and read it, because truly, I mean, you might think that this is my job because I'm the head of the book club, but this is me speaking as a human being. I think we'll be so much
Thank
better
you.
if we all read this book and
Thank
give
you.
it some thought, because I know some people will be a little bit affronted. I'm 100% sure of that. And if you're not part of Mind Valley Book Club, sign up, because I have access to the world's best authors. And see you next week. Bye bye.